DJI Air 3S is easily one of my favourite drones for flying out in the countryside, but out of the box there's a few settings that actually result in some fairly poor manoeuvres and very jerky video. So I'll give you an example of what I mean. If we just go straight up, and you will be flying forwards and you want to turn. Very, very jerky turns. And this is literally one of the most common things I see on drone videos, and it does drive me a little bit bananas because it's just so unnecessary. Even if you put it into cine mode, better, but still very unpleasant when you're turning. Good news is, most of what I'm going to talk about today is extremely easy to change, and there's only about 5 or 6 key settings that you want to adjust that will affect the sensitivity of the sticks and the speed of movement where the drone is turning or where the gimbal is pitching up and down, and crucially how fast that movement starts and how slow that movement stops. So first off, we're going to go into the main control settings. That's 3 dots top right, and go across to control. And you scroll down a little bit and it's all in the Gain and Expo tuning. Now, when you go inside that screen, you will see a whole number of adjustments that you can make. We're only going to adjust, as I said, 5 or 6 to be honest. Crucially, you get 3 versions of these adjustments. One for cine mode, one for normal mode, and one for sport mode. So, for now, let's just go into normal mode and we'll just work our way down very quickly. First, slider, pretty straightforward, max horizontal speed. How fast can it go in that particular mode? Normal mode, you're at 15 meters per second. Sport mode, 21 meters per second, or if you're in Europe, it'll be capped at 19 meters per second. And obviously cine mode slowed right down to 5 meters per second. Personally, for me, I actually find that too slow. So I will actually lift it up in cine mode to around 10 meters per second as well. Next, you've got the maxed ascent speed. Now this is literally just how fast the drone is going to go up and down, and in truth that doesn't make too much difference, and I actually think you can get some beautiful sweeping views, some big reveals if you are able to lift the drone up quite quickly. So I actually always want this as high as it can go. Now you are restricted, unfortunately. If we are in normal mode, the max ascent speed is stuck at 6 meters per second, which I think is a bit of a shame. You can't go up as high as you can in sport mode, where you can go up to 10 meters per second. That's a pretty fast ascent speed, and it does make for some really brilliant big reveal shots. So it is what it is. We're stuck with 6 meters per second in normal mode. Cine mode, I actually find, again, you can be waiting forever to try and change height if you leave it on the 3 meters per second. So I have that set up to the same speed, 6 meters per second. Conversely, descent speed is exactly the same. How quickly will the drone descend? So again, you are stuck with a max of 6 meters per second in normal mode, 10 in sport, and I lift the cine mode speed up to the same as normal mode. Right, here's the first really big movement or adjustment that will make a huge difference. It's the max angular velocity, is literally how fast the drone is going to be turning, or otherwise known as the yaw. That's an aircraft term. Yaw is literally how fast does an aircraft turn. From a camera perspective, it's how quickly is it panning from left to right. First off, let's actually show you the results of having it too high. If we jack it right up to 90, that's 90 degrees per second. It'll do a quarter turn in 1 second. And sure enough, when you turn it, you can see super sharp, super fast, not really what we want. If we slide it right down to 20 degrees per second, now when you do full left stick, it's slower. So for normal, I have it around 20-25, and in cine mode, again, I'll have that lower than 30, I'll have it down about 20. Now in sport mode, you see, I think it's quite brutal in sport mode. Doesn't need to be. 130 degrees per second, that's over a quarter, that's almost a third of a turning circle in 1 second. I don't know, when would you ever need to turn the camera that fast? So in sport mode, I also knock it down. I actually have it around about half that, about 65, 70. Remember, you're only going to see the effect of what you do when you switch the actual aircraft into the corresponding mode. So if you're going to be testing each value, you do need to make sure you're flying in the same mode as the list of adjustments you're actually changing. The other thing that has a real effect on this is the next item down, which is very much related, yaw smoothness. I told you that the angular velocity is otherwise known as yaw. It's when the aircraft is turning. Yaw smoothness, the next value down, is how gently does that movement start and how gently does that movement stop. It's a little buffer, and it's actually quite nice to have a higher value, because you will start to turn, then you'll do your turn, and when you let go of the stick, you'll come to a very slow and gentle stop. Let's show you the extreme, shall we? If I take it right up to 100, it's probably a bit too high to be honest. If I do a full stick and then let go, when I let go, you can see it carries on turning a little bit. And conversely, if I knock that right down to 0, when I start turning the stick, it starts, and when I let go of the stick, it stops dead. That is the cause of this very jerky panning movement. So I have a high value on the yaw smoothness. Normal, I've got around 75. Cine mode, up high around 90. And sport mode, a bit lower, around 50. That to me is roughly the right values, but obviously, as with all of these, the idea is that you can practice for yourself and work out exactly what value is going to be good for your flying style. Right, the next, if we're going down, the next item that we can change is brake sensitivity. So brake sensitivity is quite literally how fast will the drone stop when you let go of the right hand stick. So you probably want it to stop quite fast, because normally when you let go of the stick, it's for a reason. You don't want it to crash into something. Now this tends to only make a real difference. This setting, brake sensitivity, only makes a difference if you are flying in brake mode. You've got the obstacle avoidance. So obstacle avoidance, I normally fly in bypass these days. I used to fly in brake mode all the time. I found the obstacle avoidance of the Air 3S is quite brilliant at navigating around trees, so now I leave it in bypass. If you choose to fly in brake mode though, this is what that adjustment does. Brake sensitivity right up to 150. And now, if you are flying forwards and you let go, it stops pretty much bang on where you let go of the stick. Now, if I adjust that the other way, brake sensitivity right down to 10, I think is the minimum, you'll get a bit of a difference. So now, when you are flying forwards and you let go, you see how the drone just carries on. And it'll keep on. And same in reverse. You let go, and you can see it takes a really long time to come to a stop. To me, when you let go of the stick, you want the drone to stop pretty much as fast as possible. If you're flying up high, how fast the drone stops won't actually have much of an impact on your video. The normal settings for brake sensitivity, I will have normally up around 100, which is pretty much, I think, what comes out of the box. Cine mode, can knock it down a little bit lower, say 70. Sport mode, I kind of think you really want it as high as possible. To me, you want it up at 150 in sport mode. You're flying fast, you see something coming up, especially as you haven't got obstacle avoidance happening in sport mode, you want that drone to stop as quickly as possible. So it is critical, I think, to have the braking sensitivity as high as possible when you're flying in sport mode. So the next section down is Expo, and you see this small little graph, and you've got 3 coloured sliders. Now all the Expo settings are doing is adjusting how sensitive the initial stick movements are. You actually want a nice slow start. So I have things set down quite low. So now you see I've got quite a flat element of this blue line, and if I just move the stick slightly, you only get a very slight movement, and I have to move the stick right over before it actually starts giving me the full turn. So that's all the Expo setting is doing. Like I said, I wouldn't get too hung up on it. I think the easiest way to summarize it is if you have a nice flat element to that little X in the middle, you will have a very gradual start to the movement, whatever you're doing, whether you're going up, down, turning, or moving forwards or backwards. A small stick movement will result in a very small movement, and a large stick movement will result in a large movement. Kind of makes sense when you say it like that. So, moving quickly on, the last critical, I think, adjustment is the tilt, is the max control speed or tilt. And it's quite literally how fast is the gimbal going to be pitching up and down. Again, very straightforward. Jack it right up. 100 degrees in 1 second means it will literally go from horizontal down to the vertical in less than 1 second. And again, I jacked it right up, have a little look. Nasty. So, conversely, if we bring that right down to 1 degree per second, it will drive you mad. Full wheel lock here. It's obviously you're moving it with your left wheel, and are we moving? Only just. So again, you've got to get this one absolutely spot on. Let's, in normal mode, get it down to around 20. Because adjusting the tilt, adjusting the pitch rather, is something I often do when I'm flying. And if you're coming up to a piece of landscape where there's hills or something and you want to pan up, it's very often the case that I want to try and adjust the tilt. And all too often, it is a very sudden, noticeable movement in the tilt. So for this, in normal, I'm going to go for quite a low speed. And below that, you see the tilt smoothness. This is just like the yaw smoothness. It's a little buffer. How gently will that movement start and how gently will that movement stop? Unsurprisingly, you want quite a high buffer. You want quite a high degree of smoothness. So now, get that right up high. When you start moving the gimbal very gently, it'll start up, and when you let go of the wheel, it'll come to a gradual stop. And again, ever so slight movement of the wheel, it'll start moving down gently, let go, and it'll come to a gradual stop. So look, didn't want to overcomplicate things, but it's quite a complicated screen. Some of the settings are more important than others. If I was going to quickly recap, to me, the most important ones: horizontal speed, it's straightforward. Why would you slow it down? Same with the ascent and descent. Again, to me, you want that pretty much as fast as possible. Angular velocity, that is how quickly is the drone turning. That's the one you really want to play around with. You'll have different values for cine, normal and sport mode. And on top of that, thank you, Ted. And on top of that, the yaw smoothness. How gently will that turn start? How gently will that turn stop? So for angular velocity and yaw smoothness, you want a low speed of turn, but you want a high degree of smoothness. Kind of makes sense. Brake sensitivity. Be careful. Why would you not want it to brake very fast? Higher is better, I think. Expo, don't worry too much about that. Like I said, have a little play. It just depends how delicate your fingers are. But generally, a flatter line in the middle will result in a more gentle movement with a very small movement of the sticks. And then finally, the other really important one is the control or the tilt. How fast do you want that gimbal to pitch up and down? And again, I think you want to have quite a low speed and a high tilt smoothness. Best thing for you to do is, as I said, get the drone up in your garden or in a park and have a little play and work out what is best for you. Biggest mistake though is to be adjusting something and not be flying in the mode that you're adjusting. So remember, you've got to be flying in normal mode and adjusting normal mode. Then when you want to go into cine mode, click it over to cine and jump into the cine mode settings and make the adjustments there as well. Anyway, look, hopefully that has helped clear up what this screen does, and hopefully, primarily, it will actually help you get much smoother video, because there are times when you're flying, you really do need to have every movement as smooth and as gentle as possible. So on that, if you found this useful, as ever, give me a little thumbs up, hit the sub ding the dong, get notified when I put this stuff out, and until next time, you have fun, happy flying.